Okay, I just have a couple of announcements really quickly before we introduce our speaker for today. First up, just want to remind you that tomorrow, 5:30 in the GSC, we have our first ever Bootstrap Your Business pitch competition. Yeah, that's right. Some of you in this room might be pitching in that competition. So please come and support the event, even if you're not pitching in it. Come, we're going to have food. It's going to be a lot of fun. And the audience members are going to decide which businesses get funded. So you get to actually vote, act like you're an investor, and put your money where you think the best return is, okay? So that's tomorrow, 5:30 in the GSC. Everyone's invited, so invite your friends, roommates, whoever. And then I also wanted to let you know of something really cool. We have a student team in here, 3 of our students, Khulud, Zaid, and Ayman, who entered the Student Entrepreneur Challenge, which is one of the competitions I've been telling you about, where you can win a trip to California, $1,000. Well, they are in the top 20. So I asked Khulud if she could just come up briefly, talk a little bit about what her idea is and a little bit about this competition. And I'm putting her on the spot, so she didn't know I was going to do this. Thanks.
Hey everyone, I'm Khulud from Tunisia, just call me Kay. So as you said, we just participated in the competition and we made it to the top 20. Our idea is an app that will help students back in Tunisia to connect and study together because we don't have office hours for professors and the tutors are really expensive. So that's really gonna solve a big problem, save students some money. And we're gonna be pitching the ideas this Friday, actually at 1 p.m. So we hope we make it to the top 5, and actually win the competition. So that's it.
Awesome, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate your applause because that really deserves applause. These are your peers who've taken a chance. They entered this national competition and they're in the top 20. So we really hope that they can make it into the top 5, and I think they have a good shot at doing it. Okay, where did my papers go? There we go. All right. Any questions about anything on Canvas real quick before we get started? Yes, Kareem. For the Bootstrap Your Business competition, it's up to you. You can use slides if you want, or you can use no slides. Whatever you think is best, but you only have 3 minutes. Okay? 3 minutes and then 1 minute Q&A with the audience. Okay? We will have a screen there if you want to use slides. Okay, well, without further ado then, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker and speakers, potentially, today. Jason Christensen spent the last 20 years of his career in the security and home automation industry. Has anyone here been to the University Mall in Orem? Have you seen that giant glass building that's part of the new mall, and it says NorthStar on it? That's his company, the company that he founded. So, in 2000, he founded NorthStar Alarm and served as CEO until 2019. He oversaw the company's growth to over 60,000 active customers in 30 states, one of the largest residential security providers in the nation. A passionate leader, Jason leads by example in living the NorthStar core values of integrity, accountability, and service. Jason also brought frozen custard to Utah Valley in 2003, opening the doors of his own restaurant concept, Coney's Frozen Custard. I was a huge fan of Coney's. Love my frozen custard. He received his bachelor's degree in economics in 1996 from BYU, graduating with summa cum laude honors. He also received his MBA from BYU in 2005. Jason and his wife Meradith, who's also here and who is, sorry to say this, Jason, probably the real engine behind the Christensen duo, right? They have 4 daughters and welcomed their 5th child, a baby boy, in 2017. So please welcome Jason Christensen.
You want to switch that? Can you guys hear me okay in the back? Is this great? Yes? Yeah. Kind of? Sort of? Okay. You want to switch that, Russ?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's good. It's great to be here with you guys. We made the trek down from Provo this morning, and we almost ended up in Vegas. I missed a turn, so I get on I-15 and I'm heading to Vegas. So that's how it is. I think we just introduced myself, my wife Meradith. I already know what you're thinking. She's way better looking than you are. So, and I understand that is true. She's also smarter and funnier and a lot of other things too. But that's okay. It's always good to marry up, I say. This is just a picture of our family to add to that by way of introduction. I have four beautiful daughters and this baby boy, and they are the absolute joy of my life. And that's, for me, that's everything right here in this picture. I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but I wanted to just kind of get that out of the way, by way of introduction. So Russ talked a little bit about just what NorthStar is. How many of you had heard of NorthStar before? So a few of you. Let me ask this too, just to understand. How many of you have ever done sales and gone out and done like a summer sales type? Pest control, security, so just a few of you. All right, good. Well, this is a picture of NorthStar today. We are, as Russ mentioned, we're servicing 60,000 customers. The company today, with that and with that size, it's approximately maybe $150 million company, the size that it is today. And I want to just talk a little bit about, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about my own personal story, some of my background and some of my experiences, and hopefully share some of the lessons that I learned along the way in my role at NorthStar. If you guys, also just one thing to think about as I'm talking, I want to leave some time at the very end, so if you have any questions, we'll leave some time. You can ask me questions, and then my wife as well, if you want to ask questions for her as well. I want to just start out and just by way of introduction, I grew up in West Valley City, Utah, and I went to Granger High School. Anyone go to Granger? All right. Got a couple answers here. All right. So, growing up in Granger, I think one thing, this is a picture of me. I grew up actually on a small farm, and if you're in West Valley, you probably say there aren't any farms in West Valley, but there are some, and this is just one that, where I lived. And so I had, kind of a different experience growing up, on the farm. I went to Valley Junior High, and then I went to, did you go to Valley? All right. Valley? Nice. Good. That's good. The Ligers, yeah. Right. Yeah. I learned, though, when I was in elementary school that I was middle class. And the reason I learned that, socioeconomic, I remember we had a teacher in elementary school, and I remember the teacher was explaining and teaching us about socioeconomics. And the teacher told us that we were all middle class, those of us that lived in West Valley. And I had a friend, he wasn't even kind of a friend, he was kind of more like my arch nemesis in the neighborhood. I'm not going to say his name, we'll say his name was Percy, just because that is kind of a name that sounds like somebody that was an arch nemesis. And so Percy raised his hand and he said, he told the teacher, he said, no, my family, we're actually upper class. And we all thought that was, and the teacher's like, no, you're probably not, But anyway, it was kind of a little bit weird. I think it was about a month later, I was out on the street and there were police cars that were surrounding our whole street. It was kind of scary in the neighborhood. And we watched, and Percy's mom was being taken out, escorted out, and was being arrested for embezzling from her company. So that was sort of an explanation, I think, early on. I think the reason I just shared that is because I grew up in relatively simple circumstances, and we didn't have a lot of money. When I want to talk a little bit about that as far as when I went to college. I went to Brigham Young University in my undergrad. And I went to college, and I was fortunate to be able to earn a scholarship for school, because otherwise I had no money, and my parents didn't give me any money to really pay for things. I don't know how you guys are doing it. Some of you are probably maybe in that situation as well. I sold plasma to try to eke by that first year. After I got home from a mission, and you just do you do what you have to do, and and I had a friend of mine that introduced me, that told me, hey, let's go. I have heard about this job that you can make all this money. And he said, let's go try this out. And so I was like, I had nothing better to do. I was looking at working on a cruise ship in Alaska at the time. Or not a cruise ship, a fishing boat, like the fishing boats in Alaska. And that was supposedly it was going to pay some good money. I decided to go do this and go sell pest control. And those of you guys have done sales, who's done pest control? So that's what you guys, all right. So I went out to California, and I went out with there was a group of 6 of us in this office in California. It was the central coast of California, Santa Maria. And my parents thought I was crazy. Where I came from, they were like, and at that time, this is 1994, this wasn't a really common thing at the time. So my parents were like, "What? You're insane. This is a scam, and you shouldn't go do this." And I'm like, "Well, I don't have anything better to do, so I'm going to go give it a try." So I went out and I started knocking doors. I remember very distinctly going out and knocking doors, and a lot of you, those of you that have, can probably relate to it. But it was the scariest thing I've ever done. For me, and maybe just my personality, I was scared to death. I remember knocking the door and just getting shot down at the door and feeling so stupid, and I didn't know what to say. It was a horrible, horrible experience. The guys in my office, they were all having moderate success a lot sooner. And after 2 weeks knocking doors, selling pest control, I was in the office, among the 6 of us, I was dead last. I think I had gotten 2 sales, which is pretty bad in 2 weeks for pest control, right? Guys that have done it are like, yeah, that's terrible. That sucks. And I was I felt like I was at kind of an all-time low. I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore, And the conversation I had was, I'm just not good at sales, right? This isn't my thing. But there was another side of me. I was really competitive. Competitive. And it more than anything, it just kind of it just pissed me off. I was angry about what was happening, to the point where I was kind of at this major crossroads in my life. This job, in my whole career experiencing, this experience that I'm telling you, it was the most important experience I had. This isn't a recruiting pitch to go do summer sales. I don't care. But for me, this was the most transformational, pivotal experience in my life up to that point, because I sucked at what I was doing, and I kind of had reached this crossroads. I couldn't keep going like this. Anyway, long story short was I went back and I spent one night just alone. I locked myself in a room, and I was like, I've got to kind of figure this out mentally, right? And then I started studying things that just on my own, right? Because I had to figure it out. Well, long story short was, after that 2 weeks, and I could talk a lot about the specifics, but after that 2 weeks, there was a big change that happened. And I literally, it was almost kind of instantaneous. The very next Monday, I went out and I sold 3 accounts in one day. just something kind of snapped for me. And I started to figure out sales. And from that point, I literally, I never looked back for the rest of the summer. In fact, the rest of that summer, I don't know that there was even a day that went by that I wasn't like the top rep in the office. That's how it was. The point, I think that the main thing with that, so let me finish that. I finished that summer, and I decided, okay, I've kind of figured out sales. Now I want to kind of learn some things about management. So I went back to the company that I worked for, and I said, all right, I want to be a manager now for you guys. I was the top first-year rep in the company that summer. I ended up like going from being that bad to like being the top first-year rep in that whole company out of like hundreds of people. So I went in and I said, I want to manage. And the guy there said, you know what? Your manager kind of didn't give you a good recommendation. He said he doesn't think you're really cut out to manage. And I'm like, serious? And he said, yeah, no. So you can come sell for us, but you're not going to manage for us. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, so I was like, all right, screw you guys. I said, I went and I opened up a phone book and I found another pest control company and I told them what I had done. And I had sold more accounts than anyone had in their company. They were like, yeah, we'd love you to come manage for us. So I went and managed for this other company. And you know, that next summer was, I would say, maybe the second most important job I had, because it was horrible. It was such a hard summer. It was like the hardest thing managing. Like I literally had an emotional breakdown in the middle of summer. The girl I was dating at the time, she came out and visited me for like a day, and she had to go home the next day. And I started just bawling the night before she was leaving because I was just depressed, and I was like, it was so hard, this experience. But I learned so much from that experience. The key lesson I think that I just would like, this is something I think it's really important to understand is, you know, for you guys, you've probably already had experiences right now where you've told yourself something about yourself. Maybe you did bad in a math class or something in junior high, and you came to this conclusion, like, I'm not good at math, okay? Or, you know, I'm not good at, I'm disorganized. I'm just not good at organization, right? Whatever that is, okay? When you think about like my experience, it would have been really, really easy. I mean, I was probably just seconds away from going home and giving up when I went out to do sales. And if I would have gone home, then that conversation and my self-concept for the rest of my life would be, I'm not good at sales, right? Because I quit. And that is the story, right? And is that true? Well, yeah, it's true, because, you know, I made it true. And this is the one takeaway I'd hope that you guys, if anything that you take away from this, that you can walk away with, is to recognize that your abilities, they're not static, right? The abilities. And there are things that you're telling yourself right now that you're not good at. Here's what I would suggest. Just add maybe one word. When you say, I'm not good at whatever. I'm not good at dating. Or I'm not good at whatever. Then add the word yet. Just add that word to it, okay? And when you start to think of it that way, you're approaching it with an open mindset, okay? And right now, there's studies that have been done where certain people, they approach things with a pessimistic mindset or an optimistic mindset. And the optimistic mindset sees adversity or failure as temporary. The pessimistic mindset sees those types of things as permanent, or they're defining characteristics that I can't change, right? So that's the lesson that I had, and it was a lesson, it's a lesson that I took throughout my entire career, because I can't tell you, there were so many things that I wasn't good at, you know, as I kind of stepped into different phases of my professional career. But the one thing that I was good at was being resilient and to not giving up and to always trying to find a way through. And no matter what it's been, I always believe that there's a path. I've always believed that there's a path through whatever challenges that have come up throughout my career. So this is a really quick overview of NorthStar right now, and just kind of it's a timeline that shows a little bit about the history of the company. I started the company in the year 2000, and really, this kind of weird when you look at this. You see all these cool things after 2009, but you notice it says 2000, and then it goes right to 2009. That's 9 years, right? That was kind of the sucky, hard. That was the most challenging period of time. That was really, really hard period of time to get to that point. And I'm going to probably talk about a few things. Most of what I talk about, I'm going to share some experiences that took place between 2000 and 2009. Since then, some really cool things happened along the way. This just kind of shows, that kind of progression. We started with nothing. By 2009, we had 10,000 customers. And today we have 60,000. So you can kind of see that our growth was kind of a little bit slow, and then all of a sudden, we were able to really start to accelerate that growth. There's a lot of companies that we competed with. Almost all of them are out of business today. In these early days, almost every company that we competed with, they're out of business. One isn't. It's called Vivint, and that's, you've heard of them. But they got started around the same time. The difference is NorthStar, from the very beginning, we decided to approach it differently than all the other companies. We decided that we were going to be actually a security company right from the get-go, meaning that we were going to have customers, and we were going to service those customers, and we were going to keep our customers. And a lot of these other companies, they would sell off the customers to a big national company like Monotronics or ADT or something like that. But we were keeping our customers. So our business model was to create a recurring revenue, right? Because these customers paid our company a monthly amount, and we were investing a lot of money to create this recurring revenue. And it costs a lot of money. It's very expensive to add. Every customer we added cost us a lot of money. Fortunately, in the early days, it didn't cost us as much as it does today, but and that was a nice thing because it allowed us to grow. But either way, it was expensive. So the biggest challenge that we had as a company was capital. And I'll talk a little bit about that, just having the capital necessary to be able to keep growing. This is a picture of the original building where NorthStar started. I had worked for another company, so I started working in this industry in 1998. And the only reason I started working, I was hired by a company because I had been really good at sales. In fact, like in my greatest achievement was in 1996, I was the top pest control salesperson in the nation. I sold, in 4 months, I had sold just under 700 accounts, which at that time, prior to that, the most anyone had done was 400. So I had become really, really good at sales. And so this company, they hired and asked me if I would be interested in starting up a home security sales, kind of modeled after what pest control had been. So in '98, I came in and I created this business of doing sales door to door, doing home security. And no one had really done it successfully. Not even Vivint at that time. And so we were able to do it. We were able to do that successfully. I left that company in 2000 and I moved into this little office here and started NorthStar. And really, we didn't even have the whole office. We occupied just that there's an upper floor. It was probably like 300 square feet. And I sat in the corner. I had a desk. And that was kind of what all there was. Like, I literally worked by myself in this office the first year. It's very lonely. You remember 9/11? I sat in that office all day by myself on 9/11, reading about the events of that day. But that was kind of where we were at. That's when the company started, our first summer. The one interesting thing, which is just that when we started, this other company I'd worked for, we had, I ended up leaving the company, and one of the guys that had worked for me, the day that I left the company, he said, all right, listen, he's like, I want to talk to you. He goes, I think we should start a business. And so we went to TGI Fridays that night. It was actually on, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember this, but if you remember the election day when it was George Bush that ran against Al Gore, and there were the hanging chads and the whole controversy. Maybe you're probably too young to remember that. You're too young to remember that? It was 90. That was 2000. That was in 2000. Is that when you guys were born? Okay. Well, read your history books. And that was the day that we conceived of doing NorthStar. So I had a partner, and probably if it wasn't for him, I'm not that entrepreneurial, really, to be honest, but he kind of pushed me into it and said, let's do it. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. My plan was I was actually enrolled in business school. I was actually enrolled at UCLA, and I was supposed to start business school, but I wasn't supposed to start till the next year. So I'm like, all right, well, let's give it a try. Let's start a company. When we started the company, we actually had a totally different idea. We weren't even going to do security. We actually had this idea that we were going to go sell deregulated energy, which we were going to do that door to door. And that actually was a terrible, terrible idea. We had actually recruited, we had like 3 or 4 offices ready to go do deregulated energy. And like 2 months before the summer, I told my partner, Alan, I said, I just don't really feel that good about this. I'm like I just have this pit in my stomach. So I said, let's just do 2 home security, because we know that business, right? I'm like, let's just do 2 home security offices just to kind of hedge the bet, right? Well, a week before the summer, we found out that like it was literally like a week before the summer, and we had everything ready, and like these guys we had apartments and everything was all ready to go, and I had gone out to this meeting, and I found out that we couldn't even do it. Like it was not like even feasible, that it was going to be, I would have lost everything had we done that. Like that would have just been a fiasco. So we immediately switched and said, we called all these guys in and said, you know what? I know you got hired to go sell energy, and it sounded like a really good idea, but we're actually going to have you go sell home security. And that went over okay with some of them, and some of them weren't too happy about it. But all that happened, and this was where all that started. When I started at NorthStar, you talk about this idea of wearing different hats. You've heard of that term, right, within a business. And so I just want to kind of try to help you understand. And those of you that have already started, you probably understand that. Congratulations, by the way, to your success so far on things. When you're starting out a business, though, for me, I had a partner, and he did like recruiting, which was kind of like his thing. He was really good at like recruiting, and he was good at sales. He was a really good sales guy. But other than that, I did everything else. Literally, I did all the legal work. I managed all the compliance. I did finance. I kept all of the books. I cut all the paychecks. I paid all of our suppliers. I did marketing. I had to learn how to design like newsletters and make videos, and this was not really a big online time, so there wasn't a lot of that, but you kind of get the idea. Like, these are a lot of different hats. Sales support, and then I would work, and then I was the only one in the office, because there would be all these guys out, and then I was in the office, and I was fielding calls and handling stuff all day, all by myself. The hardest thing, and this is kind of literally then what took place then over the next 19 years for me, was I had to start taking off hats, okay? And that was really hard. It was hard for me to take off hats because, like, in my mind, I'm like, well, I probably am going to be able to do this better than anyone else. So I need to be the one doing this, right? You know, I actually had lunch with a guy yesterday who's kind of got a small business, and he just wanted to ask me some questions. And he's kind of at this place where he's kind of losing his mind because he's wearing all these hats, and he's really having a hard time. So I asked him the question. I'm like, well, Matt, I'm like, what is it that you do that's unique to the, like, that's specialized, that's unique to the success of your business? What critical things do you do, and what are things that somebody else could do? And even if maybe they don't do it exactly, I mean, maybe they do it 90% as well as you do, right? And usually what I actually found out in my experience was that when I actually made good choices in hiring the right people, they actually did better, which is, you know, they're actually better, and certainly better than I was while I'm juggling all these different things that I'm trying to be responsible for. So really, really hard for me. It was really hard to start to trust other people and to, like, turn over meaningful, you know, responsibility. By 2005, I was still kind of wearing all these different hats of the business, and I had a guy that he was just a guy that worked in our call center. Like, he was a student at BYU, and he was studying accounting. He came in to me, and this was, you know, I think back on this. He walked into my office and he said, you know, you seems like you're really kind of overworked. You know, you're burning the candle on both ends. He said, what if I took care of the finance? He said, what if you actually let me start taking care of the finances? And I was like, ooh, that's kind of a scary one to let go of. You know, when you're in a business, that's a scary one to let go of. But I had worked with the guy, and he had impeccable character, and I trusted him explicitly. So I said, yeah, okay. So I turned over all the books and all the finances to this guy. And today, and that was like in 2005 or 6 or something. Today, he's the CFO of NorthStar. And he literally started, it was kind of just a temporary job. And he's making a lot of money, and he's doing really, really well. So that, you know, learning how to be able to do that, and once again, being willing to trust others was a big lesson for me, and to allow other people to do their jobs, and then learning to just kind of get out of their way. Once you've kind of identified the right person, then turn it over, and don't micromanage things. You know, don't be stupid and just be totally disconnected from what they're doing, but you have to be able to trust other people as you're going along with your business. In 2005, so this original partner I had when I started the business, we had kind of reached a point where he wanted different things. We got along really well. In fact, this is what's crazy. Most people, when you buy out a partner, it's kind of like when you separate, it's kind of like getting divorced, and you hate each other for the rest of your lives, which doesn't always happen, but that happens a lot, right? So he just wanted, there were a couple things that we disagreed with. I didn't want to pay ourselves very much money. In fact, this whole time, I'm like, we can't pay ourselves very much money. He wanted to be paid more. And so we were kind of disagreeing with different things like finances. And finally, by 2005, he just said, you know what? We've got a good thing going. Let's just sell it. We can split it. We can sell it and kind of go our separate ways. Well, I wasn't ready to do that, and that's what he wanted to do. So that kind of prompted this whole thing. I had no idea how to kind of navigate something like that. So I did what I always did whenever I had something that I wasn't really familiar with. I went and bought a book about, like, negotiating, and there was a book called Principled, what is it called? Principled Centered Negotiations. Getting to Yes, that's what it's called. Getting to Yes, which is really a great book on negotiating. And I read that, And what it allowed us to do, so I was able to kind of navigate this whole thing, and we were able to separate, and I went to lunch with him last week. And so we're still friends. In fact, he texted me this morning. So we've maintained a good friendship. And he actually got back into the industry 2 years later, so he was a competitor, which is, crazy. Like, he became a competitor of mine, but we've still maintained a good friendship. It was really important to me, and it's always been important to me throughout my career to not burn bridges with anyone and to try to end any kind of relationship on a positive note and to maintain a good relationship, because you just never know. And you just never know. And there's nothing good that's going to come from having a bad relationship from someone. Nothing good will ever come from that. We had so the other thing that had happened at this time, though, was that we this was actually something kind of along those lines. I was such a tightwad early on. I paid myself. So after this all happened, I bought out my partner, and then it was the next year when I met Meradith, and I had already been dating, and that's a whole other long story. That took me a long time, by the way, to close that sale. That was like, that was a 3-year, anyway. But by 2006, we got engaged. And I remember Meradith said to me, we were engaged, and she said to me, she's like, I'm not sure how to ask this. She's like, how much money do you make? Because there's not really any kind of concept. And when she asked me that, I felt like almost like I was really kind of embarrassed to answer the question because I didn't get paid. I was not paying myself very much money. I mean, I was paying myself just enough to kind of eke by and to pay for things. But there were a lot of people in the company got paid way more than I did. Like, the sales guys all made way more money than I did. It was maybe like 40,000 a year or something, like just enough that I was like able to kind of pay for things and whatever. So I was embarrassed to tell her how much I made, but I'm like, well, I kind of decide how much I pay myself because I own the company now and everything, because I bought out my partner. So it was kind of this awkward conversation. But the lesson with that is, I just would say is, it is a massive sacrifice to start a company. You're going to have to give everything to it, and you have to be patient. And in this case, I believed in what we were doing, so I wanted to leave all of the money in the business. I felt my very best investment at that time was keeping everything into the business and allowing the business to kind of grow and to build the value that way. So we needed some money, though, and I had a guy, well, maybe cut this a little short, but we had sold some accounts to a company in 2005 at the time when I separated with my partner. And the company that we had sold the accounts to, there was a guy that had financed them. His name was Dennis Brush. Well, he came in and asked me, he said, what do you want to do? He's like, what's your vision for this business? And I had never really had to think about it like that. So I had this spreadsheet, and I put together a spreadsheet, and I showed him a spreadsheet that showed, that we were going to be, bazillionaires, and, everyone's a spreadsheet millionaire right? We're all spreadsheet millionaires, and I was a spreadsheet millionaire, and I showed him this. Because we had dealt so fairly and honestly with the company when we sold those accounts, at that time, then he turned around and he said, listen, he's like, I want to fund you. He goes, I'm going to give you $9 million. I'm like, you give me $9 million? And I was like, are you kidding? And so that really, that allowed our company to move forward. And it was still hard, but we had the funding at that time to really continue to grow. So, okay. So a couple of those lessons were keep patience. And the other thing is that when I separated from my partner, up until this time, I think my partner was kind of like the feather that Dumbo had in his trunk, like where he gave me there was this confidence that I had because I had a partner. And it was a big step to actually believe in myself. It's scary. It was scary then to separate out and say, all right, I got to go, and it's all on me. That's a really scary thing. But at that time, I was willing to let that go and to move forward and trust in myself on what I was doing. NorthStar, I wish I could talk a little bit more about this. If I was to say what's the reason why NorthStar has been as successful as it's been, when you look at that old building, that picture of that old building, right from the very get-go, we chose and adopted and articulated a very specific mission of why our company existed. And this is what we were all about. We talked about, it's like when we articulated that now as to empower confident living. And that's really what our high-level purpose was. And it related to all of our employees, and it related to all of our customers. That's what we were all about. And our focus and how we did that was by taking away worry. We call it less worry, more life. The other thing that we did was we articulated core values. And this quote here I really like is what it says here is, remember, it is not what you say or wish or hope or intend or plan to do or be someday. It's only what you do that counts. Your actions tell yourself and everyone around you who you really are. So it doesn't matter if I tell everybody that I'm the most honest person in the world. It's what I do. And it's by living those principles, that's what's going to make the difference. All too often, we see in the business, and I saw it all the time, where individuals, and especially in our industry, and especially in sales, where individuals are willing to compromise principle for expediency, because there's a short-term dollar to be gained. But all I'll say on that is it's always going to be short-term. Yes, you can short-term probably cheat and get money and by compromising principle, but long-term success is going to be rooted by having values and living them. And that to me was the soul of NorthStar and the heart of the culture of the company and what's kind of contributed to all our long-term success. This just another thing, I just will say just two things on it. It's always been important to me to try to maintain a balance and allocate a certain amount of time to all the different functional areas of my life. And today I exercise every day, and I listen to audiobooks all the time. And I allocate time to be with my family, and different types of things that are, that's important. However, work-life balance is probably not, it doesn't really exist, and especially as an entrepreneur. Don't forget these areas of your life and how you're going to balance that, but you will probably have to go through seasons, and I'll just say there's seasons of time when it's going to have to be disproportionate, and you won't be able to allocate that time evenly. You're not going to be successful doing that, and you're going to have to find ways to get on the same page with your wife or whatever else to be successful. And I want to give you guys a minute for questions. So I'll say, I stepped down for different reasons, and I'm happy to talk about that at the beginning of this year. I sold a majority of the business several years ago that, at that time to kind of to be able to diversify and to give me, some flexibility. I was in my 40s and I had 5 kids, so I was just in a different stage of life. That's always another big challenge, is when do you sell your business? And that's a whole other conversation as well. But today, this was just, so with that, I was serving in my church as well, and it just all lined up where I was able to I got released from being a bishop in the church, and all at the same time. So this summer I did something that I've never done in my life. I was able to just leave, and we spent a good part of the summer in Costa Rica. I took the kids, and it was amazing. I mean, it's the best thing I've ever done. Right now, I've got to get home by 4 o'clock because I've got to go coach a soccer game for 3rd and 4th grade girls. So, and it's awesome. I love it. I'm out of time. I want to just thank you guys for letting me come talk to you right now and share some of my experiences. Any questions? I guess we got 5 minutes still. 4 minutes. And if my wife, if you guys want to ask Meradith any questions, come on. There's got to be some questions. Yes, go ahead.
So it took you about 2010
Yes. Yes. You know, I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing because now, like, the mindset is, all right, I'm gonna have, and that's, I guess, the one thing I just kind of said. He said, how did you stay motivated for 9 years? I mean, it wasn't like we were not having any success. It was just really slow coming, and it was just really challenging. But like a lot of it is what I talked about. It's like embracing and being resilient and being patient too. Patience is so huge. So many guys, so many people I see in our industry that as soon as they make a buck, they've gone and bought this crazy expensive new car, and they're blowing their money, and it's stupid, you know. At least for me, like part of it was just my conservative nature and how I did things. Patience, you know, the key is really, it's patience and resilience is really a lot of that. So go ahead. Yeah. Oh, good.
It should be.
Now he's not busy at all, and we're trying to learn how to do that. Because I've been wearing all the hats at home, you know. I think early on I just decided, I'm 11 years younger than him, so I had been dating other college students. And then to marry somebody with a full-blown career was really hard for me at first. I was like, why aren't you texting me back? I'm texting him all day, and he's in important meetings, you know. And I'm like, I love you, when can we talk? You know, whatever. But I think early on I decided that it was either going to be me feeling like resentful, like, oh, he spent so much time in his career, or I was going to take ownership in NorthStar as well, and that I was going to make it us running the company. And in my mind, I'm like, we're doing this together. And this family operation cannot function without what he's bringing it in. Like, we can't. Like, we needed the company to do well for our family's livelihood. So I think if you will do that in relationships, and you know, and he does that for me and supports me, and now we're kind of, you know, I want to go back and get my master's now, and I want to do this, and I want to write a book, and yada yada yada. But we're kind of sharing that. But I think just if you will align yourself and take ownership with your partner's successes and make it your success, really make it your success, then you share in all of it. And you're never feeling like, oh, it's us versus, no, we actually are the motivation of everything he's doing. So, anyways.
One more question?
Yeah. Question for you, Jason. How do you manage competition, or what do you think that differentiates you from the other competitors?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, you kind of go back, I think, I would say one thing that, you know, one thing that I would say is that we always knew who we are and we knew what we were all about. In recruiting, we hired people that we knew were aligned with our values. So we didn't hire a lot of the same people. I know I was pretty selective, which is kind of weird because most companies in this will hire anyone that was willing to come sell and knock doors or whatever. But living and staying true to that was a big part of it. Early on, we were different because we were keeping our customers, and none of our competition was. They were all dealer programs. So a lot of times they had more money than we did, but we had like a long-term asset that was way more secure. And I never made a commitment that I didn't know I could keep. Whereas I saw a lot of that happen with a lot of the competition, where commitments were made where they didn't know whether or not they were going to be able to keep them, or keeping a commitment was based on somebody else. And that was never the case. For me, I would never commit to something that I didn't know that I could keep that commitment. There's probably a lot of other things, you know, I would say, but just that was kind of the big difference between NorthStar and a lot of our competition early on. Okay, I guess we're out of time, so thank you guys.
Another round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you. You're welcome to come up and talk to Jason and Meredith if you've got time.
Do you want to try to get back? I mean, yeah, not too bad. Oh, see, that's...